The night was thick with a silence that felt like a presence, an unseen weight that pressed against the back of your neck. You remember that first time you felt the ache, an ache that was not just pain, but a hollow that seemed to echo from somewhere deep within, a place you could not name. It was a moment you realized that your heart had learned to beat to a rhythm that was not yours, but the echo of a distant drum that had been beating for you since you were still a child. In that instant, the world seemed to shift, as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a path that was both familiar and frightening. Imagine walking through a corridor of memories, each step stirring up a whisper of a childhood scene that feels both distant and impossibly close. You see the flicker of a parent's face, the shadow of a stern hand, the quiet voice that told you you were never enough. These memories are not just stories you tell yourself. They are the threads that weave the tapestry of your adult relationships. Every time you fall into the trap of toxic love, you unknowingly replay that ancient script, as if the past were a ghost that refuses to leave your present. You might wonder why the same pattern keeps resurfacing, why the same toxic love story seems to be written in your heart, as if you were a character in a play that you cannot escape. The answer lies in a place that feels both familiar and alien, a place where the past and present collide. It is a place that is both a prison and a sanctuary, where your deepest fears and desires are locked together in a fragile dance. The question is, are you ready to step into that space, to look at the darkness and find the truth that lies hidden within? Picture the world as a vast, uncharted ocean, and your childhood trauma as a storm that has carved a canyon in your soul. You have been sailing in this ocean for years, steering by the stars of your own making, unaware that the storm still rages beneath the surface. When the tide of love comes in, it is as if you are caught in the current of that storm, pulled toward the same shore you have always known, but this time with a different, darker echo. You might think you are a victim of fate, but fate is merely a reflection of the choices you have made, choices that were shaped by a past that you have not yet confronted. The darkness you feel is not an enemy. It is a mirror that reflects back the parts of yourself that you have hidden away. It is the part of you that has learned to survive by putting on a mask, by becoming a vessel for pain, by allowing toxic love to become a familiar lullaby. Yet, within that darkness lies a key, an invitation to open the door to a new kind of love, one that is not a repetition of the past, but creation of your own future. You may feel the urge to dismiss this as another psychological theory, another fleeting trend. But the truth is, this is not a theory, it is a doorway. The doorway is narrow and dim, but offers a view that is both unsettling and transformative. If you stay here, you will only see the shadows of your childhood. And if you step forward, you will see the possibility of a new horizon. The question you must ask yourself is not whether you can escape, but whether you are willing to step into the darkness and find a light that lies beyond it. The first time a heartbeat syncs with a pulse that isn't yours, you feel an invisible thread tugging at your chest. It is the pull of an archetypal pattern that has been rehearsed in your mind since before you could even name it. Imagine a carousel that spins without a driver, each horse a memory that repeats itself in the same rhythm. In this carousel, you are both the rider and the invisible hand that keeps the wheel turning, unaware that the hand itself is a ghost of a past you cannot see. Now, picture a mirror that does not simply reflect light, but distorts it, warping every reflection into a slightly different shape. This is what the unconscious does with your emotional map. It takes the raw, unfiltered experiences of your early years and reshapes them into symbols that guide your adult choices. You may think you are free of the past, yet the mirror of your mind keeps throwing back a version of yourself that is still in the throes of that first wound. The trick is to recognize that the mirror is not a flaw but a tool, an instrument that, if understood, can reveal the hidden architecture of your heart. One of the most potent forces at work here is the shadow self, the part of you that carries the bruises of unspoken grievances. Think of it as a library of forbidden books. Each tome holds a lesson that you never learned because it was too painful to read. When you fall into a toxic relationship, you are, in effect, reading the same forbidden book over and over again. The content may be the same, but the context shifts and the narrative grows more complex. You begin to think that the pain is a necessary rite of passage, a test of devotion that you must endure to prove your worth. Building on this, consider how the shadow self interacts with the anima or animus archetypes. These are the inner images of the opposite gender that reside within each of us. When your anima is wounded, You may unconsciously seek out a partner who mirrors that wound, creating a cycle of pain that feels inevitable. Conversely, if your anima is healed, you are more likely to attract partners who celebrate your whole being rather than your scars. The key lies in the dialogue you have with these inner images. If you treat them as allies, they can guide you toward healthier patterns. If you ignore them, they will continue to whisper false narratives into your subconscious. Another crucial layer is the concept of synchronicity. Those moments when two unrelated events align in a way that feels deeply meaningful. In the context of toxic love, synchronicity often presents itself as a series of coincidences that reinforce your belief that the relationship is destined. For example, you might see a red balloon in a crowded room, a symbol that you associate with childhood fear of abandonment. That balloon appears again the next day in a different setting, and you interpret it as a sign that your current partner will eventually leave you. This pattern of reading signs into random events is a hallmark of how trauma hijacks the mind's pattern recognition system. By learning to differentiate true synchronicity from self-fulfilling prophecy, you gain a clearer view of your own agency. The hidden revelation here is that your past is not a fixed script, but a living, breathing entity that feeds on your attention. Every time you focus on the pain, you nourish it. Every time you shift your gaze to gratitude, you weaken its hold. In the same way that a garden flourishes when weeds are removed, your emotional landscape can be cultivated by actively pruning the vines of old trauma. This cultivation requires a ritual of self-reflection that feels almost spiritual. Take a moment each night to write down a memory that triggered a painful reaction, then write a new narrative that frames that memory as a lesson rather than a curse. Over time, this practice rewires the neural pathways that once carried the echo of your childhood pain. Now, consider how this applies when you face a partner who mirrors your early wounds. Instead of reacting with the instinctive fear that has been coded into you, pause. Ask yourself, is this reaction rooted in a pattern I inherited, or is it a choice I can make right now? By bringing this question into the moment, you create a space where the shadow can be acknowledged without being consumed. This shift is not a simple fix. It is a gradual unfolding that requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to confront the uncomfortable corners of your psyche. The journey is arduous, but the reward is a relationship that no longer feels like a reenactment of a childhood tragedy, but rather a partnership built on mutual growth and understanding. Reflecting on this journey so far, you find yourself standing at the edge of a vast, uncharted canyon, its depths shrouded in twilight. Each step you have taken has carved a path through the darkness, revealing glimpses of the landscape that once seemed impenetrable. The canyon's walls, once silent witnesses to the echo of childhood wounds, now hum with the resonant frequency of your own emerging awareness. As the wind carries the distant whispers of archetypal patterns, you begin to hear a new chorus, one that speaks not of pain but of possibility. In the quiet moments between breath and thought, the subtle dance of synchronicity unfolds like a delicate choreography. It is as if the universe, with all its hidden currents, has been gently nudging you toward a crossroads where past and present intersect. The symbols that once felt like shackles now appear as stepping stones, each one offering a different perspective on the path ahead. The shadow that once seemed an immutable force is revealed to be a companion, not a tyrant, guiding you toward a deeper understanding of the self that lies beneath the surface. As you navigate this terrain, the layers of your inner landscape begin to blur, revealing a tapestry woven from threads of curiosity, resilience, and the quiet courage that has been quietly growing within you. The tapestry does not simply hang in the dark. It glows with subtle luminescence, casting light on the hidden crevices where old fears once resided. In this glow, you notice that the patterns you once believed to be fixed are, in fact, malleable, shaped by the very hands that hold them. The sense of destiny that has long haunted your thoughts starts to shift, not from a sense of inevitability, but from a newfound sense of agency. The feeling that you were merely a pawn in a grand design gives way to the realization that you are the co-author of your narrative. The ink of your choices, once thought to be guided by external forces, now feels like it is being written with your own deliberate strokes. The ink's color is no longer dictated by the shadows of your past, but by the palette of your present intentions. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer, not because it is free of complexity, but because it's illuminated by the very questions that once seemed to block your way. The questions that once felt like shackles now act as lanterns, casting a gentle glow on the terrain you must traverse. Each question is a compass, pointing toward the direction that aligns with your authentic self, rather than the echo of a life once lived. As we pivot toward the final reflection, you begin to feel a quiet anticipation, a sense of anticipation that is not a rush to an end, but a gentle unfolding. The anticipation is not a longing for closure, but a recognition that the journey itself holds a deeper meaning. The sense of closure is not an endpoint, but a doorway, one that invites you to step through with curiosity and reverence. You have gathered the fragments of your experience, and they now form a mosaic that is both complex and harmonious. The mosaic, in turn, offers a vista that is not static but ever-evolving, a horizon that expands with each breath you take. Your eyes, once fixed on the distant peaks, now see the subtle interplay of light and shadow that defines the landscape. The peaks that once seemed unreachable are now within reach, not because they become easier, but because you have learned to walk beside them, acknowledging their presence while moving forward. The journey, with all its twists and turns, has become a dialogue between your past and your future, a conversation that is both intimate and expansive. In this moment, you stand at the threshold of a new chapter, where the echoes of the past no longer dictate the rhythm of your heart. The rhythm now syncs with the pulse of your own intention, a beat that is both familiar and entirely yours. The anticipation that lingers is not a yearning for an end, but a celebration of the unfolding, the promise of what lies beyond the horizon, guided by the wisdom you have gathered and the courage you have cultivated. When the night's darkness settles over the heart, it is not merely an absence of light, but a canvas awaiting the strokes of our own intention. In the quiet, we find that the most profound alchemy occurs when we take the shards of our childhood, those jagged remnants that once carved our sense of self, and melt them into a molten core that fuels our present. The act of transformation is not a fleeting miracle. It is a deliberate, ongoing conversation between past and future, a dialogue that invites us to rewrite the narrative we once thought immutable. The truth that emerges from this conversation is that the patterns we carry are not prisons, but mirrors. They reflect our deepest fears and our most resilient strengths. When we look closely, we see that the very echoes that once seemed to dictate our choices are, in fact, invitations to choose differently. Each time we confront a toxic love, we are offered a chance to turn a familiar script into a new chapter, one that honors our growth rather than our wounds. This is a practice that transcends the individual. It is a communal act of healing. As we learn to recognize the archetypal echoes in our own hearts, we also become attuned to the hidden currents that flow through the lives of those around us. We become more than passive observers of our own stories. We become co-authors of a collective tapestry, where each thread, whether bright or shadowed, contributes to the richness of the whole. In this shared space, the act of healing is no longer solitary, but a symphony of voices, each resonating with its own unique frequency, yet harmonizing in a chorus of renewal. The power of this shift lies in its subtlety. It is not the grand gestures or dramatic declarations that forge lasting change, but the quiet, consistent acts of self-compassion and mindful awareness. When we pause to breathe, to listen to the whisper of our own inner voice, we create a sanctuary where the past can be acknowledged without being owned. In that sanctuary, the shadows that once seemed all-encompassing are reduced to gentle silhouettes, no longer capable of dictating the rhythm of our lives. The lesson here is that the journey toward healthier love is not a destination, but an evolving process, a dance between the known and the unknown. Each step, each breath, each moment of honest reflection add a new layer to our understanding of what it means to be truly loved and to love others with the same depth. It is a reminder that love, in its truest form, is not a static state but a dynamic, living practice that demands courage, patience, and an unyielding commitment to our own truth. In the quiet aftermath of this revelation, the heart feels a gentle release, as if a long-held breath has finally found its way out. The sense of being trapped by a childhood narrative dissolves, replaced by a burgeoning sense of agency and possibility. The future, once a murky expanse, becomes a horizon illuminated by the light of self-knowledge. We stand at this threshold, not as victims of our past, but as architects of our future, ready to build relationships that honor both our scars and our strengths. The true practice begins now, in the space between thought and action, where intention meets reality. It is in this liminal zone that we find the courage to step beyond the familiar, to embrace the unknown with an open heart, and to allow love to flourish in its most authentic, unfiltered form. The journey is long, the path winding, but every step taken in awareness is a step toward a life where the echoes of childhood no longer dictate the rhythm of our hearts. Instead, we become composers of our own symphony, guiding each note with the wisdom of our past and the hope of our future.